Hey everybody, the stream was set up incorrectly to support another streaming software that I don't have. So I had to redo the whole setup thing and make a new stream. So I do apologize for that. It sucks. Um, and it's as if I don't know how to do this, even though I've done this plenty of times. Can everybody hear me well enough for the people that are here? Can you guys hear me? Okay. All right. So there was a comment, I want to go to it from last time I streamed, and I thought it was a really good comment, or at least informative. And I haven't responded to anybody's comment, so I do apologize for that. But it was a very interesting addition to what I had been discussing last time. If you remember, it was about colorism. Let me go to that video so I can tell you what the comment is, because it was. I think you'd like it. Let's see. It has been a day, guys. I am so tired. My back hurts and all of that fun stuff that happens to you when you're getting old. Those type of things, your knees, all that stuff. Yep, pain today. Okay, this comment was from Joseph Green, and they said that in Chicano culture, talking of the person who commented, have a similar dynamic. This person's half white, except it's centered around language. People who can't speak Spanish are oftentimes excluded from the conversation for not being quote unquote brown enough. I think it's an effort to exert power from groups of people who are themselves excluded by white/English speaking society. And I thought that was an interesting dynamic that was taking place, because I actually was talking to a friend about the stream too. And we had kind of come up with the, conclusion that it was more about gaining some control and power based off of like having been excluded for your entire life. And so we came up with the same type of analysis, for one. For two, I think it's interesting that Chicano culture, it is centered around language instead of just this color of your skin. So there are some cultural aspects to that as well, but I didn't really go into that as far as the Black community is concerned, but I would imagine that it would be something very similar to that. Alrighty, so today though, I wanted to discuss about being wrong, specifically being wrong, or in my field of study, which is the neurosciences and psychology. So I was, searching. I don't know how I found this article, but I found an article, and it basically suggested in the article that everything you know about brain imaging is wrong. For one, the article, it was just one of those like pop sci articles that you read, and it kind of condenses what the main point of the academic article says. So for one, no, that's not true. I'll actually should link both articles down below so that you guys have an idea of what the heck I'm talking about. And I'll do that after I finish. But it was not all brain imaging, for one. It was only specific to fMRI. So if you are aware of MRI, which is magnetic resonance imaging, and I don't know if you've ever been in an MRI, but it makes the most obnoxious noise possible. It starts banging and clicking. And have you guys ever heard those printers that go? It kind of makes those noises too, except more loudly. You have to wear earplugs in order to go into these machines. So that's an MRI. So what is an fMRI? When I add F, it means functional. So it's not just designed to take an image of the brain or whatever body part is of interest, right? It is designed to basically see patterns of activation. And I don't know, maybe some of you have seen my normal videos that I normally put on this channel. I tend to talk about activation a lot, and usually I'm referring to fMRI study, where they looked at the brain and then looked at how the brain activated to a certain set of stimuli. And this activation is not in real time either. It's something that you get later on, and then you analyze it and try to determine where, specifically in the fMRI, where blood flows to certain areas of the brain. And that's your activation that occurs. So it's kind of an estimate already. So that's a problem because it's not a direct measure. It's just determining where blood seems to be flowing within the brain. Someone clip Andie's printer sounds. Yeah. But so that's an fMRI. So this particular study was specific to fMRI. It didn't worry about EEGs or any other or CAT scans or anything else that you could scan the brain and get some sort of measure from it. fMRIs is kind of the standard now. So people with very little resources or researchers with very little resources will not have access to fMRIs often, but usually the articles that get into published anthologies, get into basic scientific journals, those things, they are all often the researchers that do have a lot of resources. And so the majority of brain imaging studies to date are fMRIs, or maybe not to date, but definitely within the last at least 10 years have been fMRIs. And so it's kind of like, okay, we assume that the measure in the first place is accurate because, of course, we've done it a billion times, right? And so let me give you an example. So say I'm interested in determining how people with anxiety respond to a fear stimulus like a spider. And I'm interested in that because I want to see if there's any differences between those people with anxiety and people without anxiety. And so I give them a stimuli, or I give them a stimulus of a spider. And I look and note that the people with anxiety have higher levels of activation within the amygdala, which is the area of the brain. And they do so more than my control set, which again are the people who do not have anxiety. Okay, great. I discovered that this is a new thing now, and I have it published, right? We have a real problem in this particular field of study, and that is retesting. So we don't really have what's known as reliability. And essentially, well, we assume reliability, right? But in actuality, we don't really test for it. And so reliability is essentially sorry, I want to make sure I'm getting on to the right points. Okay, so reliability is basically, it must be able to produce the same results under similar circumstances with a new set of people with anxiety. So it can't be the same test group that I have. that I used. It's got to be an entirely different group of people with anxiety, and that they should produce the same results. We don't do that. There's not a lot of incentive in this field, and even in the field of psychology, to conduct studies. And the name escapes me right now. Maybe you guys can tell me what this is called specifically, because there is a name for this. But there really is no good incentive in this field to have another set of researchers that aren't associated with me or my lab do the same exact study and find the same results. This is how science is actually done historically, but with the privatization of a lot of things like journal articles, and journals are used to get funding through grants. We have to always come up with new things. Oh, look, not only did I find people with anxiety have this, people with depression now have this too, this effect. And so we don't have a lot of people, study replication. We do not replicate. And this is a huge, I don't know if this is a problem in other fields of science, but I know that this is a problem in psychology and the neurosciences. And I suspect it probably is in other fields too, depending on how they award grants. If they award grants based off of articles that you have and novelty of the article and the discovery within the article, yeah, they're going to have the same problem. So we don't really replicate our stuff. And what that does, it means that all of the trouble we've gone through, all of the studies we've done, to basically measure the brain and see what the responses from the brain are not reliable, or we don't even know how reliable they are in actuality. And so recently there was a study that looked at a lot of other studies to determine a reliability estimate, and it's just some fancy statistic stuff. They discovered that, well, when we look at how reliable the fMRI is at determining patterns of activation, both for the individual, like say you have an individual like me, I do that anxiety study and okay, I produced results. Well, I have to produce more results to get an individual understanding of how myself as an individual reacts to the stimuli. So we don't know the reliability estimates of that. So we don't call in those same people to do the exact study. And we don't know the reliability estimates for that was really bad. It was, I think the best reliability estimate was at like 0.5. And let's say that it goes to 1.0, right? A middle 50% of it's reliable, essentially, within me or within a set of individuals who are part of the same kind of group. We all have anxiety. It gets worse when looking at people from two different groups. So not only do we have the anxiety people that we're looking at, we have the people with depression that we're looking at. We want to determine, if those differences of brain activity hold steady for these two sets of groups. It's that reliability estimate, I think, was at like 0.03, which is really, really, really bad, because you want something like at 0.1 or higher, hopefully, and 0.5, I just said, is really bad or not ideal. And now we're at 0.03 is what these researchers found. Yikes. That's going to cause a little bit of problems within this particular field of study, because now, guess what we have to do, or we should do? We should go back to our old studies and actually, I don't know, test them again, replicate them, and see if we are able to replicate. And I think that this is a problem that has been there for a very long time. Just no one really took the time to see how big of a problem it is. And when you try to see if the study in the first place is reliable on something that already is an estimation, like it's not direct activity, it's blood flow that we assume to be that we assume to be activity. But it could be like, I don't know, blood flow to a certain part of the brain that's involved in digestion because somebody just ate before they went into the machine. It could be that we're measuring something that like that, even though we want to measure how somebody responds to me presenting them with a spider. That's what I'm interested in, but I get digestion, the process of digestion instead. I don't know that that is the case, right? I just assume that it's correct based off of other people's research or research in the past. And so we keep building on other people's research, building and building and building, and then we don't actually do the original research. And the original research is, if we aren't able to replicate it, it's garbage. And that's a problem because, well, I already said why it's a problem. Oh, can you guys not hear me? Okay, so yeah, Alan Cannon mentions, and I think I read something like this too. The same is the case with COVID-19. There is no autopsy data to confirm deaths by COVID versus deaths with COVID. So it could be somebody died, death by COVID versus death with COVID. I think that's kind of saying that if there's no, they haven't really studied or haven't gone the data together to determine if somebody died as a direct result from COVID or if they died from complications. Like, say somebody gets COVID and they end up having a stroke. There's some evidence right now that's accumulating that says that maybe COVID goes through the bloodstream and it causes blood clots. But there's also not that evidence there because some people die obviously from being unable to breathe. And that is not a blood clot. That's something that is an obvious direct symptom that we see recorded in this illness. Okay, so you can hear me? All right, great. It's probably going to be echoey. I'm in my room I don't know if you guys can see this. It's all like just a hardwood floor. And so I do have things on my walls to try to help, but I can't guarantee that the audio will improve based off of that. So right now they're having an issue with this in the medical field, essentially. So I don't know if this is an overall issue within medicine, but it's an issue within psychology and neuroscience. And why does that matter that it's an issue that we don't replicate? And if we did replicate, apparently the replication is pretty bad. Well, fMRIs, the idea of fMRIs and what makes them so, what makes people in research who uses research with those is to find how the brain activates consistently within patient populations to maybe help with diagnosis. These things are called biomarkers. So maybe there's a commonality of people with anxiety and how their brain behaves. And if we get enough data accumulated, we can determine based off of, we can put someone in a machine who we don't know if they have anxiety. They just came in with, like, hey, I have a problem with going outside. Okay, we can throw them in the fMRI and, whoa, oh, look at that. They have the same exact pattern activation as people with anxiety. So these are biomarkers. And ideally, that was the goal, is to get there. And if this is consistent, if what these researchers found is is reliable in and of itself, again, this study needs to be replicated, right? Then we're not even close to getting to a biomarker to determine to assist with like clinical diagnosis or prognosis. We are like at the beginning. If this is true. Okay, this is on anxiety, not I just think this is an interesting addition here. Formerly Rodline says, growing up, no one talked about anxiety. I felt like I was the only person on earth who felt panic like that. I'm glad people now have the internet to seek out others. Yeah, the internet's a great tool. It's amazing. And there are people in the United States that still don't have it because it's not available in their area, if you can even believe that. We have some problems with our infrastructure, if you don't already know. So we're not even close. So back to where I was, we're not even close to getting to where we can use fMRI as a biomarker at all. So we still have to rely on very indirect assessments instead of direct personal biological assessments to determine if somebody does or does not have anxiety. The problem with that is that people sometimes don't ask the questions right. Psychologists, for instance, they use a standard set of interview questions to determine if somebody does or doesn't have some kind of mental disorder. And people are trained on these things, but they're trained to basically say the question at the right cadence and with no excitement. I wouldn't be like, do you suffer from hours long where you stay awake at night? Like, you shouldn't ask that happily about if somebody has insomnia and if that insomnia could point to maybe an anxiety disorder or major depressive disorder or even bipolar disorder. So there is a standard set of questions and a standard way in which which to say those questions to determine if somebody has a psychological illness. Sometimes, often, I would argue, a lot of clinicians don't use this tool, even though this has actually been shown to be reliable assessment. They just don't use it because maybe they specialize in anxiety disorders only and assume that if you've come to see them, you therefore have an anxiety disorder. And that's a problem too. But we can't use fMRI right now. We're not even close to using fMRI right now for clinical diagnosis. And I think maybe we'll find out later on if this is bad, if this is as big a problem as I envision it being, because again, this study does need to be replicated again. And I think a lot of researchers are going to go back and look at their original studies that they did. This is kind of, what time is it? So this is a little bit off topic, maybe adjacent to this, is when researchers, ethical researchers say, they would be willing to go back and review their work and report accurately what their findings were. But what about when your findings are wrong and you report what you wanted to find, even though you didn't find that? This does happen, and science relies on trust. And if you, as a researcher, do that, that trust is broken. I have a personal experience with this. When I was younger, fresh out of undergraduate, and I'm sure you can definitely figure out who I'm talking about if you wanted to do the research enough. When I was younger, I worked in fresh out of undergraduate, early 20s. I worked in a lab, and often when you work in a lab as maybe a research manager or research or lab manager, research assistant, etc., you can conduct studies yourself. You can take over studies that were currently being done by other researchers that decided to leave the lab for one reason or another. So I got, in this case, I was given a study that was halfway done. It was from a graduate student that didn't complete the program, and so she left school without having finished the study. So I got ownership of that study. The principal investigator gave it to me to do and to complete, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That this happens all the time. When I finished the study, I did not find what the question, I was unable to answer the question that we had and do that definitively, because when I did the analysis, the results washed away. There was no difference, so to speak, and I was working with the clinical populations. I couldn't determine that, and I told the principal investigator at the time, like, look, when I did the analysis, there's nothing there. And the principal investigator said to me to give them the data, basically. And I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. No, I mean, it's your data anyways, because it's your lab. So I handed over the data and got it back, and suddenly differences were there, which was shocking because I had done the exact same analysis and found that no differences were there. I went around to other people in the lab at that time and asked them, if I was going crazy, basically, because I had done something like, what did I do wrong? And the basically the postdoc at that time, which is somebody who works in a lab underneath a principal investigator who has already gotten their doctorate. So the postdoc told me, oh, the PI does this all the time, which I'm assuming means that they changed the study results. I also asked the person that I replaced, who went to another school, and I asked them, hey, I got these results. The principal investigator got different results. We're going with the principal investigator's results. Is this normal? Like, again, what did I do wrong? And I got pretty much the same response, that they also had the same experience with another study, and where they had done the analysis, it didn't show anything significant. There was nothing there. And then they handed over the data to the principal investigator, and then suddenly differences emerged. And now it's publishable and it's published. I didn't do anything because, unfortunately, in academia, there's no way to be a whistleblower, so that you can basically make sure that you are not ostracized from the community, but still say, hey, we have a problem with researcher X. They tend to change their study results and it's inaccurate. And as an older adult, as me now, I still don't know if I would have done anything. I understand that studies are done, and that, again, we build upon those studies. People don't tend to go back and try to replicate them. So if somebody built upon the studies that the data was changed, the results were changed, and they assume that those results are accurate, it can mess up their subsequent findings. Because often when you seek to look for something, you often find it, what you're looking for. And so if you assume that the research from person X to be correct or inaccurate, you can just say, well, that part of the study I assume to be accurate because it's been done. I'm going to now look at, again, they looked at anxiety. I'm interested in depression, and I'm going to see if I got the same results with a whole different clinical population, knowing that this clinical population has this problem. And when that happens in scientific study, where somebody knowingly changes the results to basically tell a story to get it published, again, it means that the person who relied on that particular study, that, again, not associated with the particular lab or anything like that, but the persons and researchers relying on that study, their stuff is now messed up. And I know that if somebody has built upon that study that I was in charge of, I don't know what to do. Basically, I know that their stuff may be messed up now, and so on and so forth. And at the time, I kept my mouth shut. Obviously, in fact, not a lot of people know this story. I think that I'm telling this out loud to a group of people for the first time in my life about this experience and about actually not standing up for, I guess, science altogether. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure if I would do it, if I could possibly stand up for science now if I was in the same situation, because there is no way, there are no protections for you if you go, hey, that person's lying about their research. There's no, who do you even tell that to? There's no one there. And so you are faced with only one thing, and that is to tell the principal investigator directly that you think their research is wrong. And you can probably envision the problem with doing that, especially if for some reason you don't already have your PhD or degree secured. You could be kicked out of graduate school for making such an accusation. You can be fired. I was in a paid position myself when this happened, and that was my only job. I relied on it to live. And so had I gotten fired, I would have no way to pay rent, no way to basically pay for food, and all of that stuff that comes around with being fired from a job. And then I could also have the problem with not being able to utilize my experience in that position to basically bolster or even like nudge my, I guess, my resume, if you will, on subsequent applications for other graduate schools. I couldn't use that because I accused the principal investigator of something and they kicked me out of the lab. Yeah, Lonely Flower Pot says, seems like an unjust hierarchy. There is a problem with this. And Majufi asks, was this published by a peer-reviewed journal? Yes, it was. It took like a year and a half or something ridiculous, but it was. And I don't feel good about it. I think my only thing that I could do is basically go to who published it and request a retraction. And I think that would get the ball rolling on as to what had happened with it. But there's a possibility, albeit I believe to be very slight, that I just did the analysis wrong too, and they did it right. Although based off of other people saying, oh, this person does this all the time, and oh yeah, that happened to me too, I'm not inclined to believe that. Aaron A. adds, academia is likely one of the original bastions of unjust hierarchical modeling for powerful people. Agreed. I think this is a problem too if you have conflict with basically professors and say sexual harassment. Say a student is being sexually harassed by a professor. Well, who the hell do they tell? You know, if they tell the dean of the college, they run the risk of being penalized themselves, and they can't tell with any sort of anonymity involved, so that the professor doesn't retaliate against the student who's making this claim. Which, when things like that do happen, it's very often that a professor does retaliate against the student. And so you are in a lose-lose situation often. Like in my case, with the data being what I believe to be incorrect, what was reported was incorrect. My name is on that information, is on that study. And so I could go and submit and request a retraction. And then what next? If I ever want to, I don't know, go back into academia, I probably would not, I would be unable to, because people would find out that, hey, this person made this claim, and it was such a long time ago, they weren't able to verify it, whether it was whether the claim was accurate, and we don't want anything to do with this person. She's a lot of trouble. It's unfortunate. I'm reading your comments. So Brad Bloom adds, being anti-challenged or questioned seems pretty anti-science to me. No scientist should react to legit being questioned with hostility. Only for that reason. Only reason for that is if they knew they did something wrong. I agree, but also at the same time, if you didn't do something wrong and somebody accused you of doing something wrong, I think I'd be pretty angry by that. Like, I've been doing everything right, and then this person just accused me out of nowhere. I think I would be angry by that, and I would probably go through whatever procedure is needed to determine that I wasn't wrong. But you just don't have those assurances at all. And this, I think, I guess, data, if you will, manipulation, call it data manipulation, is likely to occur when studies aren't replicated, and when your research is like you being a part of a university that's depending on your grant, your professorship, maybe you're a tenure track and you're a younger professor, and you're trying to get out of like associate or assistant or whatever professor to just professor. And so basically, when you haven't secured tenure yet, you're in a constant state of, we're going to trial, essentially, job trial. But this lasts for years. And if you fail that trial, you don't get your tenure, and often will have to go to another university. And so when that tenure, securing that tenure, how many grants, how you secure, how expensive the grant is that you secured, like how much money the grant was worth. Yeah, I can imagine that would produce some conflict in which your job relies on you getting published, and you getting published relies on you finding novel things constantly. You can't replicate. Replication studies don't get published. So that's a problem, right? I don't have a solution to this either, because I think I would I'm still a coward. I mean, I'm not going to go and on this person right now. I mean, I guess I'm kind of roundabout ratting on them via this discussion, but again, I don't know who I could even tell that could impact the situation to find out if even if I was right or wrong in making the accusation in the first place. There is nobody there. I worked for a person that was world renowned in the field of study that they were in. So they were very powerful in the field and still are, I'm assuming. And again, I can't go to their boss. They're their boss, right? I can't go, I guess I could go to the college dean and then what? What would they do? Probably nothing because that person secures a lot of grant money for that university and grant money matters. Aaron A says that capitalism ruins funding in all science. If you can't produce results, you're on the street. Don't want to be in the street. Don't want to be in the street, but can't find results, make stuff up. This cycle causes distrust. It causes distrust if you know that it should be there in the first place. I think a lot of people see science as the truth tellers, but in this world where science is associated and results are what matter as opposed to discovery and discovering that, hey, maybe there are no results and that matters too. When that's the case, you are going to get people that lie, and even researchers that are honest, that don't lie about their work, don't know often or don't suspect and don't question the research that they're building on about their accuracy. They make the assumption that, oh, because scientists are so interested in the truth over all things else, then what they found was what they found, and they didn't manipulate the data at all. And that's not the case. And I know this was my first lab too. And so I don't know how widespread this problem is either, because I didn't discuss it with anyone outside of the lab. And in the way I discussed it was just asking, hey, did you have this experience? And every one of them said yes, whether they were previously in the lab or currently in the lab. And none of us had said anything about it. And with their particular study, I don't know what other studies that they are referring to, but yeah, it pulls into question this person, everything this person has done throughout their entire career, which they've been in the field for an extremely long time. Brad Bloom says that this is a very interesting and frustrating problem. Right, it is. I think that just as we question the structures of society as far as politically is concerned, as far as what economic system we use and whether that is a good one or a bad one, I want to encourage people, if you're in academia now or thinking about going into academia or university or whatever, if you're thinking about going to higher education, always question what you're reading and what you're being told, because there is that problem that exists. I shouldn't have any knowledge of it, but I do, which makes me wonder how widespread is this problem. And so I encourage you to question everything. And so that means my whole channel is like just garbage. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. The channel is just really to, I guess the main videos are to report what has been reported to you guys. It's not basically, I haven't done these studies myself. I think you all know that. Um, Majufi asks, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Are you doing research now? No, I'm not. I have considered going back into doing it, but I'm not currently. So again, there's that problem. If I do go back, I definitely want to have that door open, even if I'm just floating the idea about going back. I don't want to close that opportunity off to me because I enjoy it. I enjoy doing it. And I think my experience from having been in that lab, my first lab, was, well, hopefully when you get your own lab, when I get my own lab, I won't be this. I won't manipulate my data, and I will report the results that I have as they stand. I think that was at the time all I could hope for, basically. And that's still kind of what I'm leaning towards. Again, I think I could go to the publisher and request a retraction. And then I'd have to explain why I wanted it retracted. And then I think I would be ostracized from that field of study. And I like that field of study. I worked in it for like 15 years. So, and I'm still even talking about it. I made a whole channel around it. I enjoy it. And I don't want that door closed. And I don't want to get penalized for doing the right thing, especially when I can't be basically anonymous. Everybody will know it was from me. Okay. What? I'm sorry. I'm just reading some comments. Mm. Okay, so this is an interesting dynamic. That's Stephanie Chateau, Chateau, um, is saying, yeah. This is what they say. Yeah, I know a bit on that from experience. Stepmom was a psychiatrist, and we went to all those doctor dinners where they all argued over stuff and we're getting free dinner or stuff. You listen about new drugs. So this is how drug companies basically entice doctors and convince them to utilize the drug, to prescribe it to their patients. I think that there's a website now you can go to see if that what I would consider to be a conflict of interest if the drug company came to you and provided you dinners and trips, and while saying this has nothing to do with you prescribing the drug or not, we just want to tell you about it. And they do so, during a whole trip that they've comped for you, that they're paying for. I think that has an influence on whether you prescribe the drug or not, and also on when they just like slightly, change the molecular structure so that they can get a new patent, for instance. And so this new drug is no longer, is not at risk of becoming a generic drug for very, very, very many years to come. You want maybe them to come back every time they change and give you a free trip and a free dinner and all of those nice little things. And if you don't elect to prescribe the drug, you may not be coming back. And this happens a lot in just medicine, period. It's not exclusive to psychiatry, although psychiatry is all about drugs. That's what they do, is prescribe drugs. Okay, so Stephanie adds that they were nice and fancy, but later on didn't get psychology or psychiatry help for a long time because I thought they were all frauds. And okay, so I get what you're saying. you didn't seek out psychological help yourself because of your own personal experience of seeing that people did not behave in an ethical manner with the way in which they did prescribe drugs. Took some time to mature on that and understand corruption in medicine community doesn't negate all of it exactly. So again, if you have studies that maybe my experience in my lab, not my lab, but in the lab that I worked in my early 20s, that may be a very extremely unique experience. Would love to see replication studies to determine if that's the case, but they don't exist. And and that's also a good reason to replicate studies in the first place, is to make sure that the people that are basically reporting the information behave in an ethical manner, and you are likely to be able to kind of get away with not with manipulating your data if nobody replicates it. And I don't know how to change it, guys. I don't have a solution here, but it is a problem, and replication I think could help that. So that's my story. Jake Smith asked, Amanda, could you get into medical school? I guess if I wanted to. Sure. Let's see if anything else is here. No, I think some of this was very interesting. What you guys were saying here. Stephanie, thank you for adding your personal experience to the discussion, because it isn't exclusive to, or I guess this kind of sketchy behavior isn't exclusive to the personal experience I had. It would be nice if pharmaceuticals would replicate outside of their own labs. Like if another set of researchers would use the pharmaceutical and determine whether its efficacy, and they aren't associated with the pharma company that created the drug. That's a good way to go about it. But unfortunately, that isn't done. And I don't even think in some cases it's allowed to be done. I think if they have exclusive rights to it, I'm not sure how you could convince that drug company to give you enough of the medication to test it on enough people to determine its efficacy, especially if you may not find anything. If they know that their drug isn't entirely effective, I don't think they're going to give you permission to do that. Yeah, so Brad Bloom adds that, but now that I think about it, the fact that we don't have universal health care and we have for-profit policing brings us back to a common thread of capitalism messing things up. Yeah, I think the fact that you rely on this system basically to secure jobs, and anytime there's some unethical behavior in a system, it's likely to be the system itself that's producing the problem. And it's yes, it's on the individual to help prevent it as much as possible. But again, if you aren't in a position to do so, if you have no power over that decision, you're SOL. the Brad Bloom that adds that, oh, I also really like the anti-fascist poster on the wall. Yeah, it says always on top, but you can't see it because it looks like it's cut off from what I can tell. All right, so I think I've been chatting away enough. Some housekeeping now. I plan on having another video available, kind of a well produced, not me talking here on a live stream with you guys, but a video available either next week or the week after, depending on how life goes. Because again, this isn't a full-time thing for me. And so I have to navigate, you know, my responsibilities around doing these videos, and they are extremely time consuming. And I get very little. Other than the payoff of all of you learning something new or being told or kind of refreshing something you've already known, other than that, I don't really get anything out of it. So there's that. I think I am done for today, and I really do appreciate you guys joining me. I do apologize again for messing up the stream initially and having to redirect you to here. I am very sorry, and I hope to not make that mistake again in the future. So either way, if I do not have a heavily produced video out for you guys next week, I will still figure out what I'm going to do in a live stream for you guys and just have a discussion. Because if you're like me and you're avoiding going out because of the pandemic, it's nice to talk to other people and to see what other people have to say. So I look forward to hopefully speaking with you guys next week about something new. Yeah, there's always playback. When I finish, Stephanie said that I hope there's playback because I missed half the talk. These videos are always published. I don't know how they present on YouTube, like how you are able to find it, because on my end, what I see is regular videos and live streams, and they're separate, and I have to click separate tabs there. But maybe that's the case with the non behind the scenes version on the things that you are able to see. So hopefully you'll be able to get back to it. But all of my live streams I publish, and they're there. So hopefully you'll be able to find that. If you're not able to find it, just send me a message and I'll see if I can find it myself by not being signed into my own account. And hopefully I'll be able to walk you through it. Okay, yeah, it really, the notification system, guys, on YouTube is super unreliable. And I think I always, when I have a video available or when I'm live streaming, I will always send out a message on Twitter. I need to start sending out a message just on YouTube, period, for people who don't get notified of the video being live, but are able to see the post, because sometimes posts will go through. I should get in the habit of doing that too, but I will always send something out on Twitter. And so if you miss anything, or if you are wondering where any of my videos are, go check my Twitter account out, because I will always send you a message there. Right. Brad Bloom adds, and this is my last comment for the day, but Brad Bloom adds that I'm in the same situation, or slash feel the same way about appreciating these conversations, especially now, while not going out and socializing is what needs to happen right now, because I don't want, I think someone asked me earlier, I think it was Jake Smith, asked how I was feeling. I'm feeling a lot better. I have days where for those of you who don't know, I got coronavirus and I have asthma. And so it was rough. And I can definitively say that it was the sickest I've been in my life. And I was sick, I guess, consistently for a good 3 months. where I just couldn't breathe. And I was having heart issues too. And so, what you guys need to do now, because I don't want you to get sick and have that experience, just make sure you limit your contact with your face-to-face contact with others as much as you can, as much as possible, because you do not want to get this. And I would hope that if you did get this, you would either be asymptomatic or it would be quite mild and you wouldn't experience going through this for 4 months. I still have symptoms. I still have to do breathing treatments because I can't breathe, which I didn't have to do before, and so it's miserable. And I'm the only person ever that's had symptoms of COVID for as long as I have. If you know of anybody else, let me know in the comments because I would like to know. I am still dealing with this months later. So yeah, if you know of anybody, let me know. And so limit your contact. It seems like this is airborne. So if you have to go out, make sure you have something over your mouth and nose, whether it's a bona fide face mask or even a bandana. Make sure you've got something covering your face because um, the face covering isn't for you. It's for people around you. It's for people that are susceptible to having a really bad time with us because you may be a carrier and be asymptomatic, but if you don't produce the air that transmits COVID to others, or it's more difficult because you have a face mask on, you have a reduced a chance of infecting others. And so that would be the number one reason to wear a face mask, even though it doesn't necessarily protect you directly, even if it's an if, because researchers don't know if it protects you from getting it. They know that it protects others from not getting it right now. So please just, I think you guys are good people. So I know you're always probably thinking of others and people that are particularly vulnerable, people who already are sick with something else. They could die from this and this. So I would be, if I knew that I went out without a mask, I was a carrier, I was asymptomatic at the time, and I ended up getting someone sick and it ended up killing them, I don't think I could live with myself. So just think about like the repercussions of that. If you knew that was the outcome, would you be okay with that? Ask that question because there are people not wearing masks right now, and I want to punch them in the face because this illness was horrible. Anyways, keep yourself safe, keep yourself healthy as much as you can, help keep others healthy. Because guess what, guys? We live in a society where, as a society, there's a group of people where we all want to kind of use our resources together to help each other. And part of that is to use the resource you have to keep others healthy. So please remember that because I think people forget that, we live in a society. Anyways, thank you for joining me today. And again, I hope to talk to you guys next week. If there is a particular topic of interest that you want to discuss, also let me know in the comments because I may very well discuss it. Someone mentioned a topic, maybe not this, not the past live stream, but the previous one. And they asked me if I had done a video on it. And guess what? I'm going to do a video on it because I hadn't at the time, but I will now. So that's going to be my next video. And so again, if there's something of interest, let me know. Just either send me a message, put it down in the comments, or again, do it in a live stream. Bye, you guys, and have a great evening. Actually, have a great weekend too. Bye.